What was your rank in the military, and what did you do? What was your service?
I was a specialist, which is an E4. I was in for about 2 years. Well, I was in the National Guard for longer than that, about 4. And I was classified as a 91 Alpha, which is combat medic. And I spent most of my time working with an armored division, so tanks. And I worked out of an ambulance mostly.
Whoa, I didn't know that. How, I think you might have said, I think it's 2 years. How long were you in active duty?
Well, I was in the Army National Guard, Texas Army National Guard, right? So I was in full time for maybe a year, but spent, I think, 4 or 5 years total doing part time.
What does part-time mean?
In other words, I would go 1 weekend a month, and then 2 weeks in the summer.
What did you were a medic? So this was, how old were you?
From about 20 until maybe 24, 25.
So did you know Mom?
Yeah.
Are you dating her?
Mm-hmm.
So was
Before
it?
we were married.
Well,
And
I
I
figured
was in
that.
part-time after we got married for a little while.
Was it hard being away from her and family? Well, how far away were you?
Well, I mean, I was a few hours away. I didn't have to go overseas. It was hard being away for training. I was gone for a long time. Never mind.
Did you have to? You stayed at a camp or something?
Well, I mean, I was in military installations. So I was at Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, and I was at Fort Sam Houston, which is in San Antonio.
Is that why we're in San Antonio? Is that why we lived in San Antonio?
No, that's where Mom got a job.
Oh.
Teaching at Judson, and then I got a job after I graduated college. That's where I worked until I went to seminary.
So, well, because a lot of people think that because we lived in San Antonio, because we moved so much, like you were in active duty.
No. Not while you guys were alive. Ugh. I wasn't even married yet.
So, you were only a few hours away. How often did you visit family?
Well, I guess after about 3 months, I got to visit. And Mom, I was stationed in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston. That's where the Army trains all of its medical people, is in San Antonio. So she would come visit me, when she could.
What I remember, you always tell me that you see these big Army guys, and they get scared of like blood.
Yeah.
So what was the hardest thing you had to like see or endure?
I would say, personally, we had to mess around with, like, gas, like, not nerve gas, because that would kill you, but there are gases that are used in warfare. And so as part of our training, we had to get used to working with gases in a gas environment. So if you're on a battlefield and there's gas on the battlefield, you have to keep doing what you're doing. So we had to train using that stuff. And it's just really nasty stuff.
Did you get sick from it?
Um, no, I mean, just your eyes burn real bad. And you can't breathe real well. It burns on the inside. And you have to learn how to work in that environment. And, you know, I saw people get busted up some. But it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
I lucked out because the first Gulf War, when we went to Iraq the first time, was in 1991. And that's when I was in the active Texas Army National Guard. And that division that I was assigned to, the Texas Armored Division, would be going to the desert because it was a lot of tanks in Iraq. But it was so short that we got activated, but we didn't have to go. And then, of course, after 9/11, like 10 years later, the second Gulf War came. And that's the one that we've been at now for 12, 13 years. Right? So the second Gulf War is, you could even say we're still fighting it in a very small scale. But the very first Gulf War was 10 years prior. So it was just a fortunate turn of events that I wasn't on active duty the second time.
You would have had to go
I
somewhere?
would have had to go, yeah. And when I was a pastor, because I had prior Army service, the Army asked if I would be a chaplain
Oh, I've heard
in
of
the
that.
military. And I thought about it, but never seriously, just because I didn't want to go back into the military. But anyway.
Maybe that was it, but do you remember anything specific, like a good memory or a bad one, or did anything stick out that was terrible or amazing?
I remember getting to train with some Army Special Forces guys and some Army Rangers, which are like, you've heard like Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Well, Army has all of the branches of service have their kind of special operations people who do special jobs. They're usually extremely highly trained and they do stuff that normal people don't do. And I got to train with some of those guys, and that was cool to get to hear what they do. And
Like, what I'm thinking of is like the Marines.
well, like the Marines have a special part of the Marines that does special operations that the whole Marine doesn't do. They're small ops. They're for small groups of people, but to do very important things. You know, in the military, you saw, I think those were Navy SEALs, but those guys who went in and they shot Osama bin Laden, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a whole army full of people. It was just a few
people.
guys
Oh.
on a helicopter, right?
Yeah.
And the Army has guys who do that kind of thing. They're small numbers and they go do special jobs. And they're called, usually either special forces, they train others, or they're called Rangers.
So you got to train
So I
with
got
them?
to train with some of those guys. to train with them and learn some of the things that they learned. And that was really cool.
That is cool.
Gave me a lot of respect for them because they have to do some very hard things.
Do you have any regrets about your
Military service?
about your military experience?
No.
None?
Mm-mm.
You would say it was a good experience overall?
Mostly because I didn't have to go into combat. I served at a time when I didn't have to go. 10 years later would have been a totally different thing.
Was that when you had, like, Victoria or something? Or were you married?
Yeah. I don't think you were born yet.
Probably not.
No, wait. 01. Yeah, you were.
Oh.
All of you were born already.
Mm-hmm.
But 10 years before, none of you were born.
And
I
you would
wasn't
have
even
had to
married yet.
leave. That would
So-
have been hard.
So I was 20, how old was I? 24. So I was married. We had just gotten married. We hadn't been married very long at all.
In 01?
In 91.
Oh.
That's when the first Gulf War happened. And that's when I was eligible to go, and I would have been activated. We did get activated. We were packing all our stuff to go. But then we were told to stand down because,
So if they asked you to go, you would have had to go?
yeah. And we were planning to go
But,
because they thought we were going to be there a while. But we went in and basically defeated the Iraqi army literally in a few days. It was over. And so they're like, okay, well, stand down. And for a couple of months, we weren't sure if we might go or not. But then it was obvious that basically what was there, it was over. So it's like, okay, well, you guys, you're good. 10 years later is when, the Twin Towers get hit. It was a mess. But by that time, I was already out.
yeah. So
And I
you
was
didn't
already
have
married,
to go.
and I was already a pastor, a brand new pastor, and you guys were all born. I mean, it was totally different. It's interesting to think about that now. What a difference 10 made. 10 years.
When how did you join? Were you drafted? Did you just
No,
join?
there was no draft. I joined. Me and your Uncle CT did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. We went into the military mostly to get help paying for college.
Okay, so that was like your job?
No, well, I mean, that was the reason we went, was to get money for college. So we went in and you get a bonus, and then as you're serving, you get paid. And then we were in school. When I was still in college, I was part-time, 1 weekend a month. I was going to train with the Army, still going to school full-time, so you could do that.
Ooh.
And your Uncle CT did it full-time for a while. But then he got out too. He stayed in longer than I did. He got a higher rank too.
What was he?
I think he ultimately made it captain.
What were you?
I was a